CNN,
All right.
and if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Mr. President.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead.
Repeatedly over the course of the...
just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
Mr.
Jim Acosta, a self-aggrandizing pest who seems to actually believe any White House presser is nothing more than his own personal TV show, got his hard pass revoked this past week after an incident in which he refused to give up the mic, and physically stopped a female intern who tried to take it from him. Surprisingly, there was one journalistic organization that condemned Acosta's behavior. And no, we're not talking conservative media here. The Poynter Institute, a non-profit school in Florida that also frequently opines on issues regarding freedom of the press, didn't exactly think what happened at the White House on Wednesday was journalism at its finest. Mind you, the Poynter Institute is a nonpartisan institute that more frequently criticizes Trump than his critics. However, in an article titled CNN's Jim Acosta's Actions to Trump Don't Represent the Best of Journalism, Al Tompkins and Kelly McBride argued that while they were not offering a defense of Trump's suspension of Acosta's White House press credentials, they condemned Acosta's behavior at the presser. If you look closely at the video, when Acosta was asking questions, his exchange with the president was on track and normal. Acosta asked, "Do you think that you demonize immigrants?" To which the president answered, "No," they wrote. A better question might have been, how do you respond to the criticism that you are demonizing certain types of immigrants, namely poor immigrants? But then Acosta's questions ended and his statements began. "Your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls," he said. "And then, they are hundreds of miles away, that's not an invasion." The heated exchange grew from there. Press conferences can be high stakes because they are frequently an attempt to control the message. Reporters who prepare with neutral questions avoid revealing bias or creating unnecessary conflict. Things got uncomfortable when Acosta refused to turn over the microphone to an intern who reached out to remove it from him, and then stood up to continue his banter without the microphone. This was a White House event and he was talking to the President of the United States. A briefing is not the same as a cable news wrestling match, where sides shout at each other. Acosta should have handed over the microphone. The article also said that the accusation that Acosta manhandled the intern trying to retrieve the microphone is nonsense, which seems to be the party line everywhere. I may disagree with a lot in this article, and I'm sure that's the point. I'm writing a partisan commentary piece. While what the Poynter Institute is writing certainly counts as commentary, it's aiming to be nonpartisan. It's pointing out a simple fact: Jim Acosta had hijacked the microphone and was using it for a soliloquy, not a question. Furthermore, he'd already used up his questions and was now being forcibly relieved of the microphone, because he wasn't going to let it go any other way. In any normal universe this story wouldn't have registered. Of course he should have lost the hard pass, a document that allows him unprecedented access to the White House. That's appalling behavior, and it's not like it's the first time he's engaged in it. However, the president is Donald Trump and the network Jim Acosta works for is CNN, so bring on the outrage and the witless comparisons to 1930s continental fascism. Whether or not he manhandled the intern is a matter of debate. However, the point is clear: let's please stop hailing Acosta as a hero.
Now with reaction, conservative filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza and media reporter for The Hill, Joe Concha. So I just want to start off, before we get to the whole arm push, whether it was or whether it wasn't. this is the President of the United States. He's the commander-in-chief, and he can characterize something happening at our border however he wants. It's an invasion, it's an incursion, it's an intrusion. He has authority over the border when it comes to national security. Remember Barack Obama in Benghazi? He said that terrorist attack was a protest over a video. Now, that was an extreme mischaracterization of the truth, and the media never challenged him on that at all. They let him slide on that. So to have Acosta come up over a difference of opinion, over a choice of words, and try to argue with the president in such a rude and disrespectful way, I thought was uncalled for. And just yanking the press pass is basically just saying, listen, Jim, get on the timeout, cool off for a second, and we'll let you back next week. Dinesh, what do you think?
Well, first of all, the exchange, this to me was highly entertaining. It reminded me of some of the skirmishes between Reagan and Sam Donaldson from the old days, except Reagan and Sam Donaldson were grown-ups. Now, the funny thing here, I think with Jim Acosta, I'd have to say, I'm looking at an overgrown infant. I don't know if this is medically possible that you physically grow, but emotionally you remain an infant, and intellectually, because when you're an emotional infant, you want to grab something, you don't want to stop, you don't know enough, you want another cookie, another piece of candy, and you won't take no for an answer. And the other thing is, you have a sense of entitlement and arrogance because you don't have... He
thinks he's above everybody else in that room. He thinks it's the Jim Acosta show, and he's there to trade barbs with the President of the United States. And if he gets called out for it, he's the victim. He thinks he's the Rosa Parks of the press corps, and he's too dramatic. I don't know Jim Acosta. I've never met him. He seems like a fine guy personally, but his behavior is totally out of line. And Joe, taking a press pass away isn't attacking the First Amendment. It's just telling the guy, hey, behave yourself and conduct yourself with a little bit more decorum and have a little bit more respect for the presidency.
I'm glad you played the entire clip because all I've seen is the microphone exchange. If you watch the clip, he tries to ask Acosta 4 different questions. The way a press conference like this works, if you're a White House correspondent, you get 1 question and maybe a follow-up, maybe a second question. As you said, it's not his show. There are dozens of other reporters in there. Good ones, by the way. John Carl, ABC, Jeff Mason, Reuters, John Robertson, Fox News, Hallie Jackson, NBC. They're not trying to ask 4 questions in this case. And remember the way Acosta started that. He says, I want to challenge you. And then he goes into a lecture around whether it's an invasion or not. This is a mid-40s version of the captain of the debate team. Right? And that's not
And look how many
job.
questions the president took. He took 68 questions from 35 reporters. And Dinesh, Jim Acosta just wants to monopolize the whole thing. I think if you want to go up there and ask a question, fine. If you have a follow-up, see if you can squeeze it in. But to say to the commander-in-chief, you know what, I'm running the press conference. You don't get to decide when you want to move on to another reporter. I'm the one holding the mic. I get to decide when the President of the United States wants to move on to another reporter. Who does he think he is?
Well, I think what Trump finds maddening, and this explains the sharpness of the way Trump responded, is I think Trump recognizes that this same press corps, with Acosta in the lead perhaps, was just lapdog sycophantic to Obama.
Right.
And they are unremittingly hostile to Trump. Now, they have the right to do that, but to pretend that they're not doing that, to pretend that they're just being objective and, quote, doing their job, when the transparent bias, the agenda is so obvious to anyone watching, I think that's what Trump finds
They have
maddening.
no credibility because they treated both presidents totally differently. And then just lastly, real quick, I guess the White House is being accused of altering or doctoring that video or something like that. I don't know what they did or not. All I know is that if you look at it in real time, he has the mic in the one hand and he pulls his arm down on the woman's arm, and you can see it go down. So he's obviously provoking a physical confrontation.
I don't even think it's even the point, really, what happened with the microphone. This is 2 years of Acosta doing this. It is built to this crescendo. And let me go back to Neil Monroe. He was with the Daily Caller, and he interrupted President Obama in 2012. I asked your producers to put together a couple of headlines here as far as the reaction when he interrupted the president once. Politico. Obama interrupted interrupted by heckling reporter? Who is Neil Monroe, and why is he interrupting the president? The Atlantic. And finally, this is the best one from Mediaite. CNN White House reporter. Obama heckler let him sound passionate. That White House reporter wasn't Jim Acosta. I don't hear anybody calling Jim Acosta a heckler now.
One man's heckler is another man's hero. All right, guys, I got to run. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you. And God bless America.